The Independent Commission Against Corruption arrests over 100 workers on suspicion of forging qualifications. Staff of ESF in kindergarten pleads guilty to accepting bribes from parents. And President Xi Jinping makes key speech in BRICS summit. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The Independent Commission Against Corruption has arrested 148 people suspected of being involved in syndicates that forged documents to register as excavation operators and electrical workers. The Labor Department has since canceled the 100 certificates for excavator operators involved in the case. The Electrical and Mechanical Services Department also canceled the registration of the electrical workers involved. Samantha Lee reports.
The Independent Commission Against Corruption, or ICAC, received complaints of suspected bribery and forgery of documents that are needed to prove work experience. The documents are used to obtain professional license from relevant authorities. In operations codenamed Rocket Gun and Beacon Tower, a total of 148 individuals aged 22 to 69 were arrested. In Rockhagen, officers arrested 111 people comprising the suspected mastermind, who is an excavation operator, staff from 5 construction companies, instructors from 2 accredited training course providers, as well as construction workers. The ICAC said the mastermind ran an unauthorized training center in Samchang, helping people with the relevant experience obtain certificates. It is estimated to involve $3 million.
In this case, we found that most of the workers attending the 2 days course, that means the experienced operator course, they have no relevant working experience as an excavator operator, so that they need to submit a false employment proof to falsely claim that they have 3 years relevant experience.
In Beacon Tower, the ICAC arrested another syndicate leader staff from 4 construction companies and electrical workers. They are suspected of helping people fabricate proof of work experience to register as Grade A electrical workers. It is estimated to involve $60,000.
In the investigation so far, we have also see whether in the past, in the works they handle, whether there's any industrial accident or other event that lead to safety issue. But so far, there's no safety issue happen in those applications involving false qualification.
The ICAC urged the public to report to the authorities if they find anything suspicious. The Anti-Corruption Agency added investigations are still ongoing and it is not ruling out more arrests. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
A former administrator at the ESF Wu Kai-sha International Kindergarten pleaded guilty to receiving bribes of up to $640,000 from at least 13 parents to assist their children's admission into the school.
The incidents took place between 2018 and 2021, when 54-year-old defendant Fatima Rumjan worked as an administrator at the ESF Wu Kai-sha International Kindergarten and handled student admissions. Following kindergarten protocol, interviews will be arranged for the children after applications are received. Once admitted, the children will be given a randomly generated allocation number, with forward numbers given admission priority. All parents involved in the case had their children placed on the waiting list. Rumjan told the parents that she could arrange for their children's placement in the school, initially requiring a cash payment of $20,000. The bribes gradually increased to between $50,000 and $100,000. With the defendant receiving a total of $640,000. The defendant also tricked one parent that the applicant was placed 40th on the waiting list, despite actually placing second, resulting in the parent paying a bribe of $100,000. Rumjan personally received the bribes from the parents in locations such as shopping malls, restaurants, MTR stations, and ladies' public toilets. After receiving the bribes, the defendant would send the parents their admission contracts, promising that their children would be placed in the kindergarten class of the next school year. Rumjan's activities were unveiled 3 years ago when the kindergarten conducted an internal audit. She, along with 13 parents and a businessman, were charged with 18 counts of bribery, with Rumjan alone involved in 13 counts. She pleaded guilty to 9 counts of bribery at the West Kowloon Magistrates Courts. Rumjan sentencing is adjourned until the other defendants are tried. The trials will begin on the 14th of next month, during which Rumjan will testify against the parents.
The observatory have upgraded tropical cyclone Trami to a severe tropical storm. They will issue the standby signal number 1 tomorrow at the earliest as Trami edges closer to the city. The weather in Hong Kong became noticeably cooler compared with yesterday. As of 11:30 a.m., temperatures around the city dropped by an average of 1.4 to 4.5 degrees. The observatory reminded residents to remain cautious of the arrival of Trami, which is set to enter within 800 kilometers of the city between late Thursday and early Friday. The tropical cyclone warning signal could be upgraded to strong wind signal number 3, depending on the wind strength and trajectory of Trami. One person has died in the U.S. and several have fallen sick from an E. coli outbreak linked to McDonald's Quarter Pounder hamburger. The fast food chain's Hong Kong office said food items contaminated with the bacteria were not sold in the SAR. The city's McDonald's office noted the E. coli outbreak is only restricted to restaurants in the U.S. Some family doctors said the bacteria could be found in the intestinal tract and feces of warm-blooded animals. They said food products could become contaminated by those who did not wash their hands after using the restroom. Health specialists reminded residents to cook their food at temperatures of 75 degrees Celsius or above for over 1 minute to eliminate most of the E. coli. President Xi Jinping delivered a key speech at the BRICS summit in Russia. He said the world is facing new turmoils and needs to make firm decisions, and a BRICS for peace should be built. President Xi arrived at the Kazan Expo International Exhibition Center in Kazan at about 10:30 this morning. During talks with the BRICS leaders, Xi delivered a key speech. He urged countries to uphold 3 principles to work towards peace: no spillover from the battlefield, no escalation of fighting, and no provocation by any party. This, he said, can help to mediate the conflicts in Gaza and in Ukraine. Xi said the BRICS group should stay at the forefront in reforming the global governance system and called on countries to promote innovation, high-quality development, and sustainability. Russian President Vladimir Putin earlier held bilateral talks with President Xi and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. President Xi Jinping highlighted the achievements of the China-Russia relationship over the years, while India wants to resolve the Ukraine conflict peacefully. Danny Zhou reports.
BRICS leaders posed for a group photo during this year's gathering, the first summit after the bloc's expansion in January. Hours after arriving in the central Russian city of Kazan, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with Putin on the sidelines of the 3-day BRICS summit. Putin touted what he called a privileged strategic partnership between the two nations and welcomed India's decision to open a new consulate in Kazan. He said the expansion of India's diplomatic presence will further contribute to their bilateral ties. Modi called for a peaceful and quick end to the war in Ukraine, pledging to provide all possible assistance. India has been walking a diplomatic tightrope amid Western pressure since the war broke out in 2022. Modi stressed India remains in touch with the two sides and that it fully backs early restoration of peace and stability. Yesterday, President Xi Jinping met with Putin for bilateral talks. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Russia. The two leaders affirmed the strength of their ties, which Xi says will not be shaken by upheavals in the international arena. Xi said the bilateral relationship does not target any third parties and upholds the right of neighboring nations to get along. Putin said the bilateral relationship is one of the world's major stabilizing forces. The 16th BRICS summit will run through Thursday with a focus on enhancing cooperation among its member states. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
In the Philippines, approaching tropical storm Trami has caused flooding in the country's eastern towns and cities, trapping people on roofs and shutting down schools and government offices on the main island of Luzon. At least one person died after being hit by a fallen tree branch in central Masbate province, while 7 others have been reported missing. Tracy Furness has more.
Ahead of Trami making landfall, expected Wednesday evening or early Thursday morning, the tropical cyclone dumped heavy rain in the eastern Philippines. Forecasters say the storm could dump up to 20 centimeters of rainfall in one day. Rescuers were out in force wading through the floodwaters, helping those in distress. In Sorsogon province, rescuers were chest deep in water carrying a boy to safety, and here rescuing children who are inside an old refrigerator box. In the northeastern province of Aurora, sustained winds were 85 kilometres per hour and gusts 105 kilometres per hour today as Trami blew closer. Thousands of villagers were evacuated to emergency shelters and storm warnings were raised in more than 24 northern and central provinces, including Manila. On the island of Luzon, the government shut down public schools and government offices except those urgently needed for disaster response. Thousands of passengers and cargo workers were stranded in several seaports after the Coast Guard said it suspended inter-island ferry services and barred fishing boats from venturing into rough seas. On average, about 20 storms and typhoons batter the Philippines each year. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Still ahead, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken hopes to revive peace talks in the Middle East. TVB News reports on the latest cultural activities from the home province of Confucius. And former Government Policy Secretary Michael Suen dies at the age of 80. Welcome back. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken left Israel today after meeting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other top officials. He said the killing last week of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar marks a success for Israel in the year-long Gaza war and hopes it helps to revive ceasefire talks. Meanwhile, the United Nations says Israel is still refusing to allow much-needed aid into northern Gaza, describing the healthcare system as on the brink of collapse. Nasvi Karim with more.
On the move again. These Palestinians in northern Gaza have been told to evacuate by Israel's military, the IDF, who say they are hunting Hamas fighters. This woman says she's lost count how many times she's moved. The lack of food and drink is not everything, she said. We want peace of mind. We want our children to live like other people. The evacuation order is also affecting nearby hospitals. Staff at the Kamal Adwan Hospital are moving critically ill patients to Al-Shifa Hospital. Adwan is one of 3 hospitals told to evacuate amid renewed military activity. The United Nations says Israel continues to deny its agency's permission to send humanitarian aid into northern Gaza.
Our colleagues in the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned that people suffering under the ongoing Israeli siege in North Gaza Governorate are rapidly exhausting all available means for their survival. OCHA stresses that civilians must be protected, whether they move or stay, and they must be able to receive the humanitarian assistance they need. This is what international humanitarian law requires.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken left Israel for Saudi Arabia today after talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and President Isaac Herzog.
Israel has achieved most of its strategic objectives when it comes to Gaza, all with the idea of making sure that October 7th could never happen again. This has come at the cost, great cost, to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Now is the time to turn those successes into an enduring strategic success. And there are really 2 things left to do. Get the hostages home and bring the war to an end.
In Lebanon, this government hospital in the capital Beirut sustained some damage. Israel has claimed that its airstrikes on a Beirut suburb in October killed Hashim Safiuddin, a senior cleric poised to take over from the assassinated Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Qufu city of China's eastern province, Shandong, is the birthplace of ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius, who has influenced Chinese culture and across East Asia for more than 2,500 years. In this second part of our series, Shandong from Ancient Culture to the Future, Jacqueline visited a cultural tourism hub in Qufu and explored how the 10 billion yuan project helps promote the legacy of China's most famous philosopher.
The world's largest statue of Confucius stands tall on Nishan of Qufu City in Shandong Province, which is also where China's most renowned philosopher was born. Measuring 72 meters in height, its statue pays tribute to the 72 sages among the 3,000 disciples of Confucius who mastered his teachings. In 2018, Qufu unveiled this Nishan Sacred Land scenic attraction, the city's cultural tourism landmark that aims to promote the legacy of Confucian teaching and traditions. The halls are named after the 5 constants that form the core of Confucian ethics, which are benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trust. Visitors can also try out the traditional fromage right here. It is an intangible cultural heritage of China.
I'm learning. It's a new part for me. I've never been to Shandong. It's one of the 4 last provinces that I haven't visited in China. The educational schools all around the world, and he's passed it. So it's quite exciting actually to, come.
At the performance of Golden Chime and Jade Vibration, tradition meets innovation. With a combination of modern stagecraft and technology to reimagine the Chinese artistic traditions of poetry, music, and dance. The show articulates the 9 stages of a Confucian follower's life, as well as the process of striving for moral excellence. Jackie Lin, TVB News, Shandong.
The Hong Kong Wine and Dine Festival, organized by the Hong Kong Tourism Board, has opened at the Central Harbourfront event space. More than 300 exhibitors from 35 countries are showcasing more than 1,000 kinds of wines. Over 110 food stalls are on display. This year, the event will run for 5 days instead of the previous 4. It will be open until 11 p.m. daily. 150,000 people are expected to attend. As no plastic cups will be provided, guests are encouraged to bring their own stemmed wine glasses or purchase a souvenir glass for $50 each. Admission tickets can be purchased online. Former Secretary for Housing, Planning and Lands Michael Suen has passed away at the age of 80. Chief Executive John Lee expressed sorrow over his death. Michael Suen died in his sleep at home on Tuesday. It is understood that he was battling kidney failure. Chief Executive John Lee said Suen had devoted decades of service to the government and commanded great respect from colleagues and the public. Suen joined the government in 1966. He rose through the ranks to become Secretary for Constitutional Affairs, Secretary for Housing, Planning and Lands, and Secretary for Education. He was best known for introducing 9 measures to stop property prices from dropping in 2002, including measures such as scrapping the subsidized housing scheme and land auctions. In India, a 7-story building under construction collapsed on Tuesday during heavy monsoon rains, killing at least 5 workers and trapping 3 others. Police said 13 people have been rescued so far by fire and disaster response teams. The building was located in Bengaluru, one of southern India's information and technology hubs. The cause of the collapse is still being investigated. Such accidents are common in India during the monsoon season, as regulations are poorly enforced and some builders cut corners or use substandard materials or even add extra floors, which leads to structural collapse. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.